Welcome to my salon, and I am your host, Madam Jacques. In order to ensure that our conversations are civilized, introspective, and intelligent, I must ask all of you to respect the following. 1. Speak only when you are recognized, and raise your hand when you wish to. 2. There will be 5-minute breaks where you can refresh yourselves, so please do not leave your seat during conversations. 3. Please respect everyone's opinions and address each issue with maturity. 4. Please do not raise your voice, and I hope these rules will be duly followed throughout the salon today. And next, let us all introduce ourselves, starting with me. I grew up in the salon under Madame Du Tenson and was educated by Enlightenment figures who regularly attended Madame's gatherings. In 1749, I inherited Madame Du Tenson's salon, which is where we are today. And I'm gonna pass the baton to Frederick the Great.
Hi, my name is Frederick the Great, otherwise known as Frederick II. I am the son of Frederick the Soldier King. I took my father's army and made Prussia even greater than it was. My policies are of an enlightened monarch, and I commend myself for doing so, and I would like to commend the other monarchs for following the same path as well.
Then I'm not feeling well.
So go to us. We are Thomas Jefferson. We were the 3rd president of the good old United States of America from the years of 1801 to 1809. And before that, we were the vice president to John Adams. We were the first Secretary of State. We were a founding father. We were a big contributing author to the Declaration of Independence as well as the Constitution. We were the ambassador of France. We were a political diplomat. And
a great reason why our good friends in France helped us separate from our hopefully soon to be repaired good friends in England. And if anybody's interested, I do have the finest wine selection of anyone in Paris, and I'm willing to argue for that. Monsieur.
Greetings. My name is Adam Smith. At 15, I was sent off to Glasgow University, and by 20, I had already become a seat chair at Glasgow University, and I ended up chairing the seat in moral philosophy in 1748, 10 years when I was 25. I met David Hume, my best friend, in 1750. And I published a theory of moral sentiments where I explained that the most important thing about empathy is being able to understand things from someone else's point of view. Then I traveled to France, where I was lucky to take part in wonderful salons of Madame Geoffroy and Julia de l'Espinasse, and I met Francois Quesnay. And his work led me to publish an inquiry into the causes and effects of the wealth of nations, which I believe will revolutionize the world and change the economic systems of production globally. I shall return to Scotland shortly after this wonderful trip, and I will get a post as a Commissioner of Customs in Scotland later in my life, where I will live in Edinburgh.
Hello, my name is Montesquieu, and I'm from south of France near Bordeaux, and I am a philosopher with a background in law. I've been a member of the Parlement of Bordeaux as well as the French Academy of Literature. My most well-known works are the Persian Letters and the Spirit of the Law. I extol ancient Roman philosophy and government and hope to apply such ideas similarly in the modern era.
I, Catherine the Great, am the Empress of Russia, a philosopher on the throne, and as I would like to say, the spiritual daughter of Peter the Great. At the age of 16, I was married to Peter III, heir to the Russian throne. However, after the unfortunate death of my husband, I took the throne. I have written the instructions, which are policies that are of liberal ideas. And I am one of the people who love the why of things. I may be kindly, I am ordinarily gentle, but in my line of business, I am obliged to will terribly at what I will at all.
Hi, my name is Stanley Diderot. When I was younger, I was actually Catholic at first because my family had connections with the church. However, I wanted to think for my own self and move to Paris, and then I later became an atheist because of this. Most people know me because I'm the main editor of the encyclopedia. Over 4,000 copies were printed and sold, and although not many people could read at the time, it has influenced society greatly. I guess I would like to thank some of the people here that were wrote part of the encyclopedia or translated part of the encyclopedia, such as Baron de Holbach or Rousseau or Voltaire. I also got a lot of support from Catherine the Great. Thank you for being my patroness and helping me out with financial issues.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I want to say I'm a great fan of Voltaire and Diderot. I grew up reading encyclopedia. I grew up reading your work, so very inspired by you guys. One thing you gotta know about me is I am one of the most radical emperor, but people say I'm the least effective, which really annoys me. But I consider myself a very liberal person. What the biggest thing I've done is I freed serfs. I completely removed the system, which is extremely radical. I've also freed the Jewish people, and I think that I'm a very good person. I think of the people first. I try to help people, and I think that power comes from the people. So I really try to get their favor and try to help them, and I think that they'll like me too.
Hello everyone, my name is Baron Dieblock, and I'm born in Germany, and I was raised by my uncle and mainly my uncle in France, and I inherited their wealth, which allowed me to have the opportunity to host some salons on my own. So based on my experiences in the Netherlands, I gained some insight on how to host a salon on my own. And it's an honor to be able to participate today. And some of my major works include System of Nature and also Christianity Unveiled, where I criticize the foundations of Christianity and also advocate for atheism.
Hello everyone, my name is Immanuel Kant. I am from Königsberg, Prussia. Although I'm merely a university professor, which by the way, it took me around 20 years to graduate due to some financial issues. And like all of you, even though I've never moved anywhere from my hometown in Prussia, like all of you, I am an avid supporter of the Enlightened movement, and rest assured, I am very well informed about the current events that are happening all around Europe. My most famous work is the Critic of Pure Reason, where I discuss the metaphysical philosophy, which includes the synthetic a priori, in which I believe that we need empiricism and rationalism in order to discover the truth about the world. And I'm also known for my moral philosophy, which includes the categorical imperative, meaning that there's a universal law to everything that we do.
So, hi everyone, I am Francois Marie Arouet, also known as Voltaire. So after listening to half of the Salons of Thoughts, I'm really excited to be participating today because it seems like there are many of my fans here. So I will really enjoy this conversation. I drink 50 to 72 cups of coffee per day. I've been in prison twice and even escaped a prison sentence. I'm a poet, satirist, critic of Frederick the Great, one of Madame du Châtelet's lovers, vegetarian, and deist. So now I wanted to tell, I'm here to promote human rights, science, deism, and reason. And part of the reason why is I was originally educated in a Jesuit school, but after leaving Paris, I started exploring like more Enlightenment ideals, and I started dipping my toes in erotic poetry, which was an adventure in itself. And that also gave me experience in dealing with the censorship system in France. So I'm also widely traveled. I've served as an intimate courtier in Prussia, along with Frederick the Great, and I've also been a royal historiographer of France. So I'm really excited for today's discussions, and I hope to crush the infamous today.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Emily Duchâtelet. But out of respect of the great minds in the room, I choose to speak English, one of the many that I am familiar with. I'm a pioneering mathematician and feminist, although history won't tell you such. My latest lover, the one that I favor at the moment, is Voltaire. We lived together with the permission of my husband. I gave him 3 children, and so he has thought that we're pretty good friends, so I can live with Voltaire. I'm a really good gambler, and so with the winnings of my money, because of my mathematical mind, I buy more books for our library. I think we are somewhere in the 21,000 volume range. The other thing to keep in mind, we respect Mr. Newton greatly, however, where he glossed over some of the finer details, I have added those details that he is missing to his theory. Voltaire and I wrote a book together. Unfortunately, Voltaire's name is the only name on that book. However, if you read in the introduction, you will find my name. So I appreciate and I'm looking forward to chatting with all of you, especially Mary Wollstonecraft, a fellow feminist who appreciates what women can be. I was a member of the aristocracy, and just a quick note, it was just my birthday, December 17th, 1706, so I am now 320.
You look amazing.
I mean, I've been told I'm quite the looker.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Olympe de Gaulle, and I'm from the southern part of France. I was born Mary Gauls, however, I changed my name after my husband passed away. I'm a feminist that looks forward to advocating for the emancipation of slaves, self-made women, the protection of orphans, support the unemployed, the aged, and the illegitimate. Aside from being a feminist, I'm also a playwright that advocates for the emancipation of slavery through my plays. The Declaration of the Rights of Women and the Female Citizen is a pamphlet I published in response to the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. By publishing this document, I hope to expose the failures of the French Revolution in the recognition of sexual equality. As I receive a bourgeois education, I'm not quite as educated as the rest of my fellow philosophers in this room. It is my greatest pleasure to be able to take part in this honorable school.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mary Wollstonecraft. I was born in London, England, and I currently reside in London, England. I am a strong advocate for female rights, and I support republicanism over monarchies. I've had plentiful experience translating literary works for the magazine, and one of the famous quotes I've incorporated in one of my works were, "Women are degraded by the propensity to enjoy the present moment, and at last, despite the freedom which they have not sufficient virtue to struggle to attain." So as you can see, I'm a strong advocate for female rights. Some of my famous works include A Vindication of Rights of Men and A Vindication of Rights of Women, published in 1792.
Mary, wonderful, excellent. I love your works. Yes. I don't think I need an introduction. It's a pleasure to be with all of you great minds here. My image is on this cookie, so I don't need an introduction. So I'm the most, what can I say? But I will introduce myself in case some of you people lived in, I don't know, in the backwoods. I'm the most celebrated founding father. I happen to be the oldest founding father. Okay.
I'm fine. Good to see you, Ben.
Yes, yes, TJ. Nice to meet you. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I may sound a little bit vain, but vanity is a good thing. I think it is. I'm the whole package. I'm a statesman, I'm a politician, I'm a businessman, I'm a scientist, I'm an inventor, I'm a publisher. I came from very humble beginnings, but I became the wealthiest man in Philadelphia. There's so many claims to fame that I have. I will list them as we engage in a more thorough discussion, but I lived a good life, and if I could do it again, I would do it again. But unfortunately, I can't go back, so if you want to know more about my life, read my autobiography. That's my greatest masterpiece. Okay? So read about me. Hopefully, you'll pick up some good points about how to live your life. Just to a couple of things. I did try to, when I was in my younger days, I did have some indiscretions with, I was engaged in some relationships with low women. And I'm not the most moral person, I have to say, but I recognize it's part of human nature. So I've learned a great deal through the years. So as I said, read my autobiography. I look forward to answering all of your questions. And Godfrey.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gottfried Leibniz, and I was born in Germany, and towards the end of the 30 Years' War. My father, he was a professor at the University of Leipzig, and he died when I was 6. So I got access to his library after he died, and then so I read a lot of books, and I became really smart. So I attended university when I was 14. I got my bachelor's degree when I was 15. I got my master's degree when I was 17. I'm a prodigy. So I guess my most well-known achievement would be the invention of calculus. Not this guy. This guy did not. And I'm also very well known for being like an optimist. Like I believe the universe that we live in is the best of all possible worlds. So, and I know a lot of people will bash me for that. So yeah, come at me. And I hope I will convince all of you that this world is the best world.
You're going to have trouble convincing Voltaire of that after Candide.
Anyway, I hope I have several occupations. So I was a librarian. I'm also an official historian and I'm an official representative at the House of Hanover, and I'm very well learned. So if you want to know anything, you can ask me. Thank you.
So I'm Sir Isaac Newton. I'm from England, and ever since I was small, I've been like involved in getting an education, making myself a better person. So I went to the King's School, and after that, I went to Trinity College in Cambridge. And despite the fact that there was like a Black Plague going on, and it like closed the university for a year, I still completed my Master of Arts, and later joined the Royal Society of London. Later in my life, I became a professor at Cambridge. I also represented Cambridge at Parliament once, and I even dabbled in politics when I was a warden in Mint. Later on, I later became the president of the Royal Society of London after Robert Hooke. Some of the things I discovered was calculus. I also explored theories on motion and gravity, as well as designed a reflecting telescope. And I also found the law of gravitation, and I had numerous really interesting discussions with Robert Hooke, who is dead.
Aren't we all?
I've also written numerous major works documenting my discoveries. Yeah.
I have to say, I feel like I'm maybe in the wrong place because as you people rattle off all of your academic triumphs and successes and your degrees in this and that, none of you are even acknowledging the fact that institutionalized education is simply slavery for young minds. Nonetheless, I am Jean-Jacques Rousseau. I was born in Switzerland, Geneva. I will always consider it my home. I was born to a moyenne order family, very middle class. I consider myself a representative of the middle class, the common man, the people, if you will. For this, I received some praise. I received some, what do you call it, flack. Does not bother me. When I was 30 years old, I had begun my life in the field of music. I brought to the Académie des Sciences in Paris my numbered musical notation theory, which was only met with such appreciation. This gave me an early distaste for the Academy. There, however, I did meet my good friend Denny. Nice to see you, Monsieur Diderot. I'm glad to see you here. I'm also glad to see some of my particularly influential people in my life, Monsieur Voltaire and Monsieur Montesquieu. How wonderful to be with you here. Following this, my stint in music, I became more interested in political theory. I am credited with launching, if you will, the Romantic movement with my novel Julie, or the New Hellois, where I celebrate the emotions, the spirit, nature, the soul, if you will. To be perfectly honest with you, I am not the biggest fan of this, you call it, Enlightenment movement. I think humanity has gone too far in terms of praising and championing the intellect, pure reason, logic, science, blah, 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 blah. We've gotten so far away from what it means to be human, what it means to have a spirit, a soul, what it means to truly be an animal. We will talk more on this later. I eventually found my way into educational philosophy, and one of my well-known texts, Emile, on education, is considered groundbreaking work in this field. I think I have said enough for now. Thank you.
And now that we've all introduced ourselves, I should start with the most important question of today. What is the Enlightenment, and what makes a person enlightened? And I want to hand the answer to this question to someone I know for sure that knows a lot about this period of movement, Mr. Hunt.
To answer this question, what is the Enlightenment? Enlightenment is man's release from his self-caused immaturity. Immaturity is the incapacity to use one's intelligence without the guidance of another. Such immaturity is self-caused, if it is not caused by lack of intelligence, but by lack of determination and courage to use one's intelligence without being guided by another. Self-caused is this tutelage when its cause lies not in lack of reason, but in lack of resolution and courage, to use it without direction from another. Sapere aude, have courage to use your own reason. That is the motto of the Enlightenment. Men are cowardice and lazy when it comes to following their own intuitions. They are so comfortable in being taken care of. They no longer care to think for themselves. Although despots abuse their power and often deprive the public of education, the common people are still responsible for their lack of courage to speak for themselves. So the final question is, do we live at present in an enlightened age? The answer is no, but in an age of enlightenment. Although men still can't quite think for themselves, they can still escape from self-caused immaturity if they start using their reason and logic more freely.
All right, well, does anyone have?
I'll certainly say what I think an enlightened person is. From my perspective, there are two things that make a person enlightened. The first is when we live in a society with a system of natural liberty, where every man, as long as he does not violate the laws of justice, is left perfectly free to pursue his own interest in his own way. and to bring both his industry and his capital into competition with those of other men. Because remember, it is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their own regard to self-interest. Therefore, an enlightened person and an enlightened society is one that allows the pursuit of self-interest of all.
Mr. Franklin?
Yes, I have a great deal to say, but I don't want to take up too much time. I was born in only 7 years after the Salem witch trials, where the world was subsumed into religious fanaticism, and I believe, to me, enlightenment means individualism, the power of rational thinking, which I practiced throughout my life, and it's the age of scientific reasoning and the science, I think, where I greatly excelled. Many of my inventions are still used today. To me, it means doing public good, doing well for the other people, and I've achieved great financial success. And but you got to do good things for other men. Okay, so enlightenment is one of my favorite words because I want to spread those ideas and inform and enlighten other people. Okay, so.
Monsieur Voltaire.
Okay, so I would like to respond to a point made by my good friend, Monsieur Kant, whom I agree with on many topics. So I definitely believe that in order to be enlightened, people have to have the courage to use their own intellect, because it is difficult to free fools from the chains they revere. So I believe that we need to, that people must inspect the constructs of society, or inspect like the chains that are holding them down and that are keeping them from being truly free, or enjoying the natural liberty that Mr. Smith talked about. So I also believe that, but in order to be able to use your intellect, it is up to us to cultivate our own garden, and one must have a certain intellectual maturity, which may be brought on by education or experience. So like one of my quotes is, disclaimer, I just shaved today, but ideas are like beards. Men do not have them until they are grown up. So maybe all of you guys with no beards might want to take note, you know. So I also want to note that tolerance is one of the biggest things that are needed in an enlightened society, because tolerance never causes bloodshed, whereas fanaticism or other where the rules are very strict, they might cause lots of wars. So I believe that enlightenment has to do with being able to use your own intellect and also being tolerant of others' ideas, just like in the salon.
Miss Wollstonecraft?
Like the rest of you have said, enlightenment runs on progress. It runs on the pursuit of intellect. But I think I'd like to raise a point here. It's impossible for the Enlightenment to run on progress if we hinder the rights of women, if we prevent women from pursuing educational opportunities. And so, in order to reach full enlightenment, we must give women the rights they need.
Monsieur Rousseau.
Merci. I disagree with many of you. I hear things, discussions of thinking for yourself, self-interest, individualism. This is where we are now at this point in our society. This is where we have evolved to. And this is too far. We have gone away from our natural roots. We have moved into this sphere of existence where we have nothing in common with the animal, of which we are. And this cannot be denied. Not at all. So we must step back, if you will. We must devolve to the point where we can balance between what it means to be an instinctive, spirit, nature-driven individual, and all of the trappings that come with society. We must have law, sure, but these laws must not go too far to bind us in a form of slavery as they have done. And I will tell you this to speak to Ms. Wollstonecraft, who has been appropriating my work and criticizing me in the public sphere. This is not the case. Women should not, it is biologically impossible for women to achieve the same kind of success as men. Women are genetically designed, I know this I hear from the people in the future, this is genetic. Biologically, anatomically, not the same as men. You have a different role, my dear, and you must fulfill that role and only that role. You do not see the man saying, I would like to bear children. I would like to have childbirth. I wish I could give milk. No, men, no, this is impossible. Women should know that certain things are impossible. And these are the pursuits of the intellect, which are not the realm of the women. Thank you.
Mr. Diderot?
Just want to say that Rousseau probably has not looked over my encyclopedia yet, because in one of the sections about women, we talked about how that we acknowledge the fact that women and men, they do mature differently, and that in that way they might be educated different. They should be educated differently. However, they still should be educated. Like they should both be, because women's wide people such as yourself may think that women are inferior is due to the fact that there is subordination. Subordination is legal, and education for women are poor on purpose, and this only straightens women's inferiority, and therefore, in order for us to be more go forth in this enlightened path, women should have equal.
Should have equal
rights.
Yes.
Mr. Frederick?
Much. I agree with many of the people who have spoken. I do believe that enlightenment is through education. It is through appreciation of the arts and understanding of the science. And in order to be enlightened, you would have to seek education, a policy that I am very fond of, which is why I have compulsory education in my country. I understand that Mr. Rousseau disagrees here, Monsieur Rousseau. However, if I may, he may have devolved himself, as he keeps on mentioning, the terms of how laws should exist, but they shouldn't control the people. See, as an enlightened monarch, I know that if there was no laws, if there was nothing of the sort to stop the people, it would be a riotous mass. So if I may, Monsieur Rousseau, I respectfully disagree with your ideas.
Says the greatest despot of our time.
Despot I may be, enlightened I am.
Oh, good comment. Yes.
Our other monarch, Joseph.
First of all, Friedrich, I completely respect you. Come back against Rousseau, I completely agree. I have enacted over 600 edicts, which is also a lot to government. And I'm also very pleased of how Adam Smith mentioned how we have the freedom to pursue our self-interest, and I completely agree with that. And then how Voltaire talked about freedom of tolerance. And so for me, personally, I think that there should be the freedom of opportunity. It's different from the equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. And I believe that we should give everybody the same chance. That's why I created a meritocracy system to allow everybody to have the chance to become, to work in the government. And then also reduce censorship, so I give people more voice, more power against the government. So I feel like for society to be enlightened, we need to have more opportunity for people and give them incentive to achieve those opportunities.
Mr. Newton?
I would like to add on to a lot of the points made. For example, Mr. Franklin, he talked about the importance of science discovery. I feel that this is really important as previously there's been many great scientists, and thanks to them, I've been able to see further than others by standing on the shoulders of them. And by that, I'm able to discover many things and better our society. And I think what's really important for enlightenment is to is for us to have secular thoughts. And despite myself being a religious man, I feel that religion, especially the influence of the Catholic Church, it should be this way, and there should be more freedom for people to discover what the truth really is. For example, the heliocentrism is being denied by the Catholic Church, and that is not right. And because of them, many people are not allowed to, are unable to have a voice. So, in order to have an enlightened society, there needs to be laxer rules and there needs to be more freedom of speech.
I'd like to first agree with Newton, but before I discuss why I agree with his ideas, I'd like to bring forth a new perspective of how we can view the pursuance of intellect. So I'd like to see it as pursuing common sense. So it is within everyone to have common sense and to be able to think rationally and also skeptically. So that a large part of that is to be able to think, to pursue happiness and self-preservation as our main goals, along with pursuing intellect. And another aspect of being able to pursue intellect and common sense is to stray away from illusory ideas, which include existence of a deity or a higher being. And with these ideas, it ties down our ability to develop as a species, and it is a big hindrance on our ability to grow.
On the topic of a great hindrance to our society, what do you all people think is the greatest problem in society right now? Enlightened?
So I think the greatest problem in society is that the pursuit of science right now, too many people think that it's only relegated to like individual experience for like rich people or like very academic people. I know like some people like Sir Isaac Newton, he just spends all day in his scientific lab doing experiments, and he doesn't even publish his works until until much later. But I feel like science needs to be a very collaborative experience. People need to build on multiple perspectives. It's not something that like individuals should come up by themselves. And I feel like the ultimate purpose of pursuing science is for God's glory and to further the happiness of all humankind. And so yes, I feel like the biggest problem in our society is that this joy of pursuing science is not shared with the masses. It's only relegated to like the top 1% of people.
Mr. Franklin?
I'd like to respond. For God's glory, I beg to disagree with my esteemed colleague. I think the pursuit of science should be for the betterment of the humanity in the community. With all of my inventions, I never patented any of them because that's my legacy, what I will leave my bifocals, the lightning rod, and all of my inventions, I did not take a penny from it. So, and I do believe in God. Yes, I do agree with you. And I think God and science could coexist together, but I think the primary purpose is for the benefit of humankind. Okay.
Ms. Jacques?
Can I just first say, before we get out of the science realm, that I truly believe that reason and mathematics can unlock the universe's mysteries. Just to throw in a little plug to myself, energy equals an object's mass times its velocity squared is one of my greatest achievements. However, it was capitalized on some guy later in the future known as Albert Einstein. But I do believe, and if I could quote myself, if I were king, I would reform an abuse which effectively cuts back half of humanity. I would have women participate in all human rights and above all those of the mind. Yes, Mr. Rousseau, I'm talking to you.
Mr. Rousseau, do you have any response to that?
Not at this time.
Jefferson?
Ma'am, if I may, I would just like to point out that all of you, if you're tired of these monarchies and would like to come to a newer, freer society, just across the pond over there in America, we have room for all ideas and all peoples, as long as you don't mind not being the boss. Excuse me, Joe. And Ben, we appreciate your business and we appreciate your sharing all of your ideas. I especially appreciate all of you sharing your ideas, since nobody in America's ever heard of any of y'all, and I get to steal all of them. It's pretty great. Thank you.
Mrs. Catherine the Great, as a female empress, what do you think?
I would like to address Mr. Rousseau on a point that he had made earlier, and saying how women are biologically incompetent.
Those were not my words, but sure, why not?
I would like to ask everyone who they think would be more suitable as a ruler. A man who knew only of toys and to order servants to march around dressed up as soldiers and did not care for the matters of the state. Or would people rather look up to a queen, ambitious, capable, and knowledgeable enough to fight for the best interests of her people? If I may venture to be frank, I would say about myself that I was every inch a gentleman.
On to Voltaire.
To reply to Mr. As they call it, TJ's comments on the preference of democracy or republicanism over absolutism, I must say that I respectfully disagree. I would rather obey a fine lion, Frederick the Great, much stronger than myself, than 200 rats of my own species. And, democracy is just a filler for textbooks. Do you actually believe that public opinion influences the government? As for myself, I would believe that the masses are at present too uneducated and too unorganized to be able to have any meaningful sort of government. And at present time, the best system of government we can have, far contrary to Mr. Jefferson's remarks, would be an enlightened monarch or an enlightened despot who would be best able to control the needs and balance the needs of the people and the state fairly, just like we see with Frederick the Great, Joseph II, and Catherine the Great here, whom I respect greatly.
Yes. Frederick the Great.
I'd like to agree with Monsieur Voltaire's comments about having an absolute ruler. See, if I really wanted to punish a province, I would have it governed by philosophers. Because I truly believe that my people and I have come to an agreement which satisfies us both. They do what they please, and I do as I please. It is a mutual agreement that has benefited the both of us. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
I think that perhaps we've deviated from the question, which I believe that Madame Geoffroy said was, what is the biggest problem in society? Is that correct, Madame? So I'm going to bring us back to that and say, I think that the biggest problem in society is the poor. Because clearly, no society can surely be flourishing and happy, of which the far greater part of the members are poor and miserable. If it is but equity, besides that they who feed, clothe, and lodge the whole body of the people should have such a share of the produce of their own labor as to be themselves tolerably well-fed, well-clothed, and well-lodged. So what I'm really saying here is that the problem is the poor, and the fact that even though they work so hard, all of their labor comes to naught because they cannot get the things that they are created. And that is the biggest problem in society today.
And on that note, should everyone be fully educated? And that includes the lower class Mr. Smith mentioned. Mr. Jefferson?
The tax which will be paid for the purpose of education is not more than the thousandth part of what will be paid to kings, priests, and nobles who will rise up among us if we leave the people in ignorance. Yes, the price of education is worth it.
Mr.
Yeah, the right to education should be reserved for everyone in the society. That's why through my endeavors, through my whole life, I think we should break down the barriers to classes. That's why I organized with my junta. By the way, this is my favorite forum, and while living in Philadelphia, I organized the civic club where we just met every week and we had these discussions similar to the one we have in today. So I organized the Pennsylvania College, which is known today as the University of Pennsylvania, the first non-religious university in the world. Among my many other accomplishments, of course, was the public library, where everybody had access to books, and so it should not just be reserved for the elite classes.
Then should education be the same for both females and males? Ms. Olympico.
As a feminist, I do agree that education should be accessible to both boys and girls, as it is important that both genders get the same education.
Ms. Chataway?
I would just like to agree with that. Access was only given to me through my aristocracy, my ties to the aristocracy. And in order to continue my education, I was wildly infamous for having my bath moved into the living room so I can bathe and still continue my lessons. Didn't matter if the male servants were in the house. The other thing that I would also like to point out is to engage in this sort of format with the gentlemen of the time who were the mathematicians of the day. I would dress as a male to go to the local coffee houses so I could continue to debate for fear that they would lose their customers. However, because of my mathematical mind, they allowed me to come as long as I remained dressed as a man.
Montesquieu?
Would it be possible for us to bring the conversation back to the topic of educating the lower class? Because I feel that not all sides have been addressed. The uneducated lower class lack the capacity to understand concepts such as the ones we are discussing today. And by that I mean to commend everyone here for their knowledge. And it is therefore necessary for us, the knowledgeable reading class, to shape society according to the Enlightenment ideas that we have just previously discussed.
Then, Monsieur Montesquieu, how should the poor ever pay for education?
Could you repeat the question?
How should the poor pay for their education?
The poor should not have to be educated.
Mr. Smith?
In my writings, I've pointed out to support my good friend here, the Marquis Montesquieu. Monsieur Montesquieu, Marquis Montesquieu, I always forget these titles.
I'm a baron.
Baron Montesquieu, thank you. Baron, I did not mean to take you down a peg. Baron Montesquieu has pointed out that the poor should not pay for their education. I also, in my Wealth of Nations, pointed out that education is one of the 4 duties of a government because it will not otherwise be provided, yet it raises the productive capacity of a nation. And therefore, all of the businesses benefit from having a public education system. And therefore, the government should support education to prepare our workers for a productive workforce, because production and consumption is the means of all human activity. Additionally, if I may, I would like to say that education is so important because the difference of natural talents in men is much less than we are aware of. The difference between the most dissimilar characters, between, for an example, a philosopher like Baron Montesquieu and a common person like the servant who brought us our tea, for example, seems to arise not so much from nature as from habit, custom, and education.
Mr. Newton?
I feel that on the other hand, government should pay for education. In fact, government shouldn't be involved in education at all. And education should be allowed to develop on its own. And that applies to the same as religion. As religion, government should merge. Everything should like stay apart. And on the topic of about girls getting an education, I don't think that they should. For obvious reason, the role of society does not allow women to be members, and that's because men and women have different roles in society. So on the question of whether or not we should make education mandatory and whether or not we should educate boys and girls the same way, I feel that no, and it's most important to develop the intellect and knowledge of boys and improve on the human capital of this gender.
Ms. Catherine, I would like to say that I believe that both the poor and the common man and the common daughters and sons, as well as the more noble daughters and sons, should all receive education. And both poor, no matter of social class and no matter of gender. I would like to say that many of the girls who graduated from the establishments that I have throughout my empire, after they graduate, they do very well at my court. So I would like to say that girls do just as well as boys. And I also, like Frederick the Great, I also believe in like the importance of education to be enlightened, to be knowledgeable and rational, to be modern and advanced, so that one could benefit the state.
I am a big supporter of compulsory education, but I believe that we are missing an important point. So morality is an important aspect of human nature, and so I think that by giving the public a moral education, the people will be better off and they would be able to contribute to society. If we wish to form the characters of children, it is of greatest importance to point out to them a certain plan and certain rules and everything, and these must be strictly adhered to. So in order for them to adhere to disciplines of like ethical and moral laws, then they would have to be trained to obey subjective rules in the beginning of their childhood, and later on they would adhere to a more objective rule of nature.
Mr. Jefferson?
If the condition of man is to be progressively improved, as we fondly hope and believe, then education is to be the chief instrument in effecting it. We need to educate anyone and everyone if our society is to be improved. We need to educate and inform the whole mass of people. We need to enable them to see that it is in their interest to preserve peace and order, and they will preserve them. And it requires no very high degree of education to convince them of this. They are the only sure reliance of the preservation of our liberty.
Ms. Wollstonecraft?
I wholeheartedly agree with Thomas Jefferson. To alleviate the ills of an unjust society, we must call for educational reform, a call for co-education established by government. I would like to offer some quotes incorporated in my works. Women are degraded by propensity to enjoy the present moment and at last despise the freedom in which they have not sufficient virtue to struggle to attain. They've always been treated subordinately in society. So is it really that women everywhere appear a defect in nature? Is it surprising when we consider that what a determinate effect of an early association of ideas has on character, that they neglect their understandings and turn all their attention to their persons? It is vain to expect virtue from women until there are some degree independent from men's. I think it's important that we strengthen the female mind by enlarging it, and that there will be an end to blind obedience.
Thank you, Ms. Wollstonecraft. And I would just like to say that everyone here seems to be reasonably famished, so I would allow a 5-minute break, and starting from now, 38.
I'll say Franklin's a little slow.
I would like to direct all of our attention to Ms. Chatelet. She has a few things to say.
I am going to read a quote from one of my private letters to Voltaire. Sadly, I am pregnant. And believe me, I am sad about this. And can you imagine how I fear for my health, even for my life? Giving birth at the age of 40. I am sad at leaving before I am ready. But I have to go to Chinese class. And by the way, I'm going to go, I'm going to give birth, and I'm going to die.
Yay! Oh,
That was quite a mic drop.
That was a mic drop.
And I'm gonna be dead. I'm gonna go die now. That's better to say that.
Publicly decide. Let our conversation be directed back to education, and I believe Joseph II would like to.
Yes. Yeah. I'll just talk about education. I think that I have to chip in. One of the greatest enlightened monarch of the universe. I just have to say that myself.
Okay.
But I just have to say that I mandated elementary education for both boys and girls. And it's government funded, so I feel like
Show off, please.
I feel like education promotes productivity, gender equality, and the sense of hard work for people to work hard and to improve themselves. And also in this time of enlightenment, of the scientific revolution, as well as the industrial revolution, all these things are merging. Our society really needs a lot of education, literacy, and a lot of awareness of what's going on, all the social uprising. So I think that education is extremely important for society. And I'm also kind of confused with Isaac Newton's arguments of making education private and religion private. Doesn't make sense at all. I don't understand.
Mr. Newton, would you care to clarify?
So what I thought was that the government should be just involved in like dealing with politics and like whatever, and they shouldn't be involved in education, as education is based on the discovery of like people, and like and it should be like the teachers will understand more, and like the people, scientists, philosophers, they'll understand more than the government. So obviously it should be up to these people who decide how education should go rather than the government, as like they're specialized in a different area than the actual professionals.
And do you have, okay. And on the note of special professionals in the field of education, what does a fully educated person look like? What should he or she have? Would anyone like to?
Sure, we have a quick little quote that sums it up. Everyone must act according to the dictates of his own reason.
Just to add really quickly, Mr. Newton, we absolutely agree with you over in this great United States of America. We have dispensed with this foolish idea of monarchy and have decided that the people should be the greatest judges of what we do as a government. That is why we will have a Department of Education using educators to inform the government how best to proceed with education.
Mr. Frick.
While I agree that people should have their own thoughts, I disagree on the thought that perhaps monarchy isn't the best idea. You see, while America is struggling to pay for their education, kind of similar to like modern day, but on the other hand, here in Prussia, we have free compulsory education, an idea that was started in Prussia first, which Joseph II may have borrowed, by the way. I like to point out that people can still develop rational thought without having to be a democracy. And at the end of the day, it is the enlightened, benevolent monarch who makes the right decisions to help his people.
I can see that our conversation is already starting to move from education onto government. So I would like to ask everyone, where does the government derive the right to rule? With God, people, or force?
People or force?
I would
Or if
love
you care to add any more categories.
Well,
Monsieur Voltaire.
Monsieur Voltaire.
So, while I definitely don't believe in like having an absolute answer to anything. I believe that enlightenment is the process of figuring out for ourselves. So, but I would like to add that I don't believe that a divine right or a God should have any part in this, because I believe in separation of church and state. So I believe that even though I'm a deist and I personally believe in God, but I don't think that monarchs derive their power from God. And I believe that the church is ultimately subordinated to the needs of the state. So furthermore, I think that I would also like to add that force. While force is commonly used as a way for governments to derive their right to rule, I believe that war is the greatest of all crimes, and even the monarchs here, especially Frederick the Great, they color their crime with the pretext of justice. But in fact, I don't believe that force is the correct way to derive the right to rule, since it is the greatest of all crimes.
Monsieur Jehovah.
I would like to agree with both sides about separation of the church and the state, and I would like to also argue against the divine right of kings, as people are the ones that should have the right to rule through common sense and rational thinking. These people should have the ability to think themselves and improve the state as a collective unity through logical thinking and acting within one's own self-interest. And the reason why there isn't God in this context is because that the world has no intrinsic spirituality in it, as there's only nature and nature alone. So there is no room for any higher being in our world, and that the world is only validated through causes and effects, and there's no room for things such as miracles or spirituality.
Mr. Franklin?
I'd like to disagree. I think there's room. First of all, let me say at the outset, I'm a deeply religious person and I believe in God, but yet religion can coexist together with science. One of my inventions, the lightning rod, flies right into the face of religious views, but again, I believe in higher being. That being said, we should all strive towards progress. So science and religion can coexist together.
Mr. Newton?
I would like to agree that science and religion can coexist. As a really religious Christian, I have fundamental belief in the Bible as the word of God written by those. I study the Bible daily, but however, I feel that the government should be, while science and religion can coexist, I feel that the government should be ruled by the people, as there should be less political involvement in the religion and education. And just look at what the Catholic Church has done to the progress of science. For example, the denying of heliocentrism, the condemning of many great minds. I feel that government and rule should be determined by the people, and that way we can have more forward progress.
Frederick?
Regarding perhaps where the monarch or whoever the government is gains the power, I actually do agree that divine right is not what determines a ruler. I think that a king is the first servant and the first magistrate of the state. Therefore, he derives his power from the people. It is through the agreement between me and my people that I am able to rule. I think that perhaps theologians are all alike of whatever religion or country they may be. Their aim is always to wield despotic authority over men's conscience. They therefore persecute all of us who have the temerity to tell the truth. Therefore, I believe that religion shouldn't be a factor. It should be separated from the church, and the church and state should be separated. However, I don't agree that perhaps people should have the decision to rule the land. It's been shown that whenever there's people in charge, the masses, they have no idea what they're doing. It is through my job as the magistrate, as the first servant of the state, to help the people.
Mr. Jefferson?
not necessarily shown always that the masses don't always know what they're doing. What has destroyed liberty and the rights of man in every government which has ever existed under the sun? It is the generalizing and concentrating all cares and powers into one body, just as you have talked about. I do verily believe that a single consolidated government would become the most corrupt government on earth. The way to have a good and safe government is not to trust it all to one, but to divide it among the many, distributing it to everyone exactly the function he is competent to. Let the national government be entrusted with the defense of the nation and its foreign and federal relations. The state governments with the civil rights, laws, police, and administration of what concerns the state generally. These things are to be divided among the people who know how to do them best, because man needs to think for himself, not have somebody think for us. Man, once surrendering his reason, has no remaining guard against absurdities, the most monstrous, and like a ship without a rudder, is the sport of every wind.
Montesquieu. I would like to applaud Mr. TJ's implementation of my ideas in the United States of America. When the legislative and executive powers are united in the same person or in the same body of magistrates, there can be no liberty, because apprehensions may arise lest the same monarch or senate should enact tyrannical laws to execute them in a tyrannical manner. And on the topic of the church and the state, I have no opinions of the Catholic Church, but I do believe that religion is necessary for a government, because as you all know, I love balance. I love the balance between powers, and a balance between religion and government is also necessary for success. And an example would be that the Christian religion is generally a very A Christian religion is applicable to despotic governments, because the compatibility between a government and the type of religion of that government is very important in creating balance. An example would be like the Ethiopian princes, the Ethiopian princes who have adopted Christianity. This has made them less cruel and less timid, and it has prevented despotism from rising in comparison to other African empires. Islam, by comparison, is a violent religion that is not suitable for controlling despotic government.
Mr. Smith?
I'm going to have a slightly different take than others. I believe that the power to govern certainly comes from the consumers, not necessarily the people or of the general will, but everyone who purchases and uses products. Because consumption is the sole end and purpose of all activity, and the interest of the producer ought to be attended to only so far as it may be necessary for promoting that of the consumer. So it is the consumers, those who buy things, that drive all progress, that drive all economic activity, that drive all the success of a nation. Therefore, it is the consumer from which the power to govern is derived. Without consumption, governments are nothing. They produce nothing. Therefore, it is the consumer that gives a government the right to rule.
Mr. Jefferson?
I would just like to rebut quickly. As a consumer, one must possess wealth in order to consume. And there is an artificial aristocracy founded on wealth and birth without either virtue or talents. The artificial aristocracy is a mischievous ingredient in government, and provision should be made to prevent its ascendancy.
May I please respond?
Yes, go on.
What I think Mr. Jefferson doesn't quite yet understand is that consumers are not always the wealthy. As a matter of fact, the wealthy are able to not consume most of their wealth. They are able to save it. It is the common person scraping by since we've had this new putting out system. We've monetized the society, and even the lowest farmer or lowest day laborer now has money. And as I was writing my book, in 1776. The vast majority of people in Great Britain, the United Kingdom, now that Scotland is a part of the United Kingdom, pardon me, of the United Kingdom, are consumers. Not wealthy, mind you, but it is the fact that they are consuming. The wealth is actually, in many ways, being stolen from the laborers by the producing capitalist class. And what really I am saying is that it is those who consume at the laboring classes who should have the right to rule the society.
Absolutely.
I humbly disagree with you, Monsieur Smith. This emphasis you have on money, on production, on consumption, this is nothing more than a recipe for greed and envy amongst your people. Where is kindness? Where is compassion? Where is brotherhood in the world today? It is gone, it has been jettisoned for these material concerns. With this Enlightenment is coming more and more of an emphasis on economy, on capital, etc., etc. We have to acknowledge that we have gone to this point of relying on these constructs. Money is a construct. Capital is a construct. We have to humbly say to ourselves, we have to be liked and likable. We have to help our neighbors. We have lost this concern.
I believe we've moved away from our original question, so I would like to rephrase it. How should we all be ruled? Mr. Smith.
How to rule. In those unfortunate countries, indeed, where men are continually afraid of the violence of their superiors, they frequently bury and conceal a great part of their stock in order to have it always on hand and to carry with them to some place of safety in case of being threatened with any of those disasters which they consider themselves at all times exposed. Therefore, the purpose of government and to rule is to protect economic activity and promote economic activity. It is also important to remember that economic activity is not just about money. It is about producing all of the goods and services that society needs.
Ms. Wollstonecraft? I have a broader view of this question. I have a broader answer to this question. So I wholeheartedly believe that as long as we don't have a monarch and we establish a republican system, we can allow society to thrive. I also want to talk about how religion ties into ruling our country and our societies. I believe that we should embrace religion. I embrace religion that combines faith with reason, morality with knowledge, and it places no limits on human inquiry. And I believe that true grace arises from some kind of an independence of mind. And so what I mean by this is that aligning with the views of Benjamin Franklin, I agree that society must be ruled with reason and also republicanism. Monsieur Voltaire?
I just want to drop in like a very short response to Mr. Smith. I agree with Mr. Smith in that that one of the functions of government should be to help foster economic activity or to promote the welfare of and human rights of all the citizens. So I believe that the art of government consists of taking as much money as possible from one class of citizens to give to another. So this is something that all governments are trying to come towards without starting civil wars or without angering too many of their citizens.
Mr. Jefferson?
Well, as a president of one of the most powerful countries on the world, I feel like we have pretty good authority on what we feel like is the best form of government, and we firmly believe that the best form of government is by the people, for the people. Sometimes it is said that man cannot be trusted with the government of himself. Can he then be trusted with the government of others? Or have we found angels in the form of kings to govern him? Let history answer that question. The equal rights of man and the happiness of every individual are now acknowledged to be the only legitimate objects of government. Modern times have the signal advantage, too, of having discovered the only device by which these rights can be secured. Government by the people, acting not in person, but by the representatives chosen by themselves. That is to say, by every man of ripe years and sane mind, who contributes either by his purse or person to the support of his country.
Joseph II.
As the monarch of the strongest nation in all of history and one of the biggest, most powerful families in European history, I have to say that government is not ruled by the people. Government needs to be ruled by empowering the people, but with a centralized monarch. So we need a monarch who has power over the people, over religion, and over many aspects of the state, so that, come on, but I want to say that we need to focus our agenda onto distributing money correctly by centralizing power into education to empower the people and to make them more productive. And as for Adam Smith, more productive people means more money, and which would increase a bigger economy, which is good for the country.
Mr. Khan?
I would like to elaborate on Ms. Wollstonecraft's point on republicanism, which I believe that is the ideal form of government. So a ruler's law gives authority rests on his uniting the general public will in his own. So in other words, the monarch's commandments should comply with the will of the citizen and not force them into blind and destructive obedience. And my definition of republicanism is the separation of executive power and legislative power. The ruler could be a single ruler or a group of people, but the laws should be based on the consent of the people.
Frederick the Great.
While the TJs here have claimed that their American system is the best system, they casually gloss over the fact that they have representatives to decide, to make their decisions for them. See, how is this system any different from the system I have? I have a bureaucracy system with bureaucrats who represent the people, and I make the decision from the informed minds of the bureaucrats. I believe that we are talking of a different, perhaps different yet similar system where mine is more efficient as we get stuff done.
I believe that Frederick the Great has missed a prepositional phrase behind the word representatives. It is by representatives chosen by themselves, chosen by the people. Your bureaucrats were not chosen by the people. This is what makes us a democracy.
I believe that if people chose the representative, it would be just as ineffective. See, I choose the bureaucrats because I know who would succeed and which person would rise in terms of meritocracy system.
Which means that it is not then therefore a meritocracy or a bureaucracy, then it is still a dictatorship if you are choosing who is in power.
Yes.
Or tyranny, yes, one and the same.
How dare you accuse me of tyranny? I'll have you know, it is through the hard work of people that they can rise up in social class.
And to follow up myself and the subject of tyranny, enlighten the people generally, and tyranny and oppressions of body and mind will vanish like spirits at the dawn of day.
I believe that that is completely untrue. I have provided compulsory education, free compulsory education. If my people really, really wanted to rise up, they would do so. However, we have reached an agreement between the two of us, or the two groups, that have been satisfactory for us.
Well, so you think, force.
See, Russia's going to do it.
Germany.
We're still here.
Our queen hailing from Prussia, Catherine the Great. No, but she came from Prussia.
She did come from Prussia. You're spot on.
I would like to add that the intention and end of the monarchy is the glory of the citizens, of the state, and of the sovereign. From the glory, the people attain a sense of liberty, which brings happiness to the people as well as true liberty. It was difficult to make changes to the state. In fact, I'm pretty sure Joseph II would agree that we have tried to give in the people more rights. However, the people, both nobles and peasants, have both been disturbed by this change in society.
I'd like to say that this question troubled me throughout my whole life, and I was torn. I worked for the post office as the supporter of the crown, and I was a loyalist, faithful to the British crown, but in my later years, I became a revolutionary. Again, it's a difficult question, but I became a believer in the Republican system as well.
I would like to move us on to what natural rights are one born with, and do they apply to all humans? Mr. Smith.
I am a firm believer in the ideas of Mr. John Locke from the United Kingdom, as am I, who believe that we are born a blank slate.
I was gonna fill it in. I didn't know if you were waiting for someone or you were pausing for dramatic effect.
We were born a blank slate, and that we then, as John Locke would say, are entitled to certain natural rights, and among them are life, liberty, and property, which my friend Thomas Jefferson here clearly did not understand when he copied the rights, but then decided to change property to pursuit of happiness to allow himself to continue owning other human beings.
So I would actually agree with TJ here, saying that the pursuit of happiness is a natural right of everybody, because I believe since we do live in the best possible world, then clearly that we should all strive for the highest form of happiness.
Voltaire? While I do agree with Mr. Leibniz there that happiness is a goal that we should all achieve to, I strongly disagree. As I've written extensively in my book, Candide, I strongly disagree that this world is the best possible world to be lived in, because otherwise that would undermine the whole idea of progress, because I believe that this whole Enlightenment concept is so that we can strive to better ourselves, better the society, and better this world, so that we can achieve a greater society, rather than having this already be the best possible alternate universe, or whatever you sciencey people are saying nowadays. Along with pursuing happiness as being a goal, I also believe that some natural rights that people should always have are freedom of religion and freedom of speech. Since one misattributed quote, but that summarizes what I think, is, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." So I believe that freedom of speech is extremely important, and it should always be preserved in every government in this world.
Mr. Newton?
One of my few friends, Mr. John Locke, I met him and like he's borrowed my books, and we've discussed many things before, and I agreed to him that men are born with natural rights. However, I would like to clarify, or I'd like to specify that all men are equal before the laws of nature. Neither governments nor kings can break those laws. So I feel that people are born with natural rights, similar to what Mr. Locke said, but I have a more scientific take on it.
Mr. Khan?
Happiness, you say. Happiness is not the most important, is not the most fundamental thing of human nature. Wait. You're good. Keep going. So humans are blessed with the ability to think rationally and to act morally. Morality is not properly the doctrine of how we may make ourselves happy, but how we may make ourselves worthy of happiness. So in other words, we have to use reason freely in order to be free and have our rights.
Just to be clear, we're talking about the rights of men, right?
Yes.
Okay. Because men deserve rights, correct?
Oh, are we going there?
Is this going now?
Like this.
Yeah, so he said that the rights should only be reserved to men, but that is clearly rubbish because I think women have just the same amount of capacity as men do. So I do not believe people like Adam Smith or Sir Newton here, who are just lifelong virgins. They will never know the true power of what women can do.
Nice.
You're here to that one.
Yes.
Yeah. Franklin and I agree.
I've had many encounters. So I'm not the most moral person to be talking, but let's leave it at that. Read my autobiography.
I believe Miss Olympique has something to say.
So I would just like to add on to Mr.
Leibniz?
Leibniz that I totally agree that women should just should have the natural rights that men have. And to add on to that, I would like to say that besides men and women, slave, even if they're black, they should also have the same rights that both genders get.
Miss Wollstonecraft?
As Olympique Gauge, how do you pronounce it?
Gauge.
Has mentioned slaves, right? I would like to bring attention to the fact that women are slaves too. So women are slaves to their husbands. And in fact, we should make women rational creatures and free citizens. And it's not like I do not wish women to have power over men, but I wish that they have power over themselves. We need to make sure that women ought to have representatives instead of being arbitrarily governed without any direct share. Allow them in the deliberations of government. I think it's important to effect a revolution in female manners. And it's time to restore them to their lost dignity. It is time to separate unchangeable morals from local manners. So I think it's very important that women deserve the rights and duties.
Catherine the Great.
So I would like to respond to Miss Wollstonecraft. Just because a woman is married to a man does not mean that she has lost her dignity. But on another note, I would like to bring the question back to what natural rights are one born with. I would say freedom, equality, and liberty. The laws ought to be framed so as to secure the safety of every citizen as much as possible. Political liberty does not consist in the notion that a man may do whatever he pleases. Liberty is the right to do whatever the law allows. The equality of the citizens consists in that they should all be subject to the same laws. On the note of happiness, I would like to say that happiness and unhappiness are in the heart and spirit of each one of us. If you feel unhappy, then place yourself above that and act so that your happiness does not get to be dependent on anything.
And on the note of happiness, is happiness the highest good one can ever achieve? Is happiness the highest good one can achieve?
I would say no. Economic outcomes are the highest good one can achieve.
All right. Well, Mr. DeHolfa.
I would agree with that statement, as happiness and self-preservation, which are two very similar concepts, are the highest good that one can achieve through rational thinking. And people should not be accrediting happiness to God, as this is a rather lazy kind of explanation for happiness, as people should be pursuing happiness through their own means rather than trying to attribute their feelings or their results through God.
Voltaire.
So
To respond to the happiness question, I definitely believe that the most important decision you can make is to be in a good mood, because contrary to Leibniz, I believe that this isn't the best alternate universe or best world. So we have free will. We need to like make these decisions to be in a good mood or to like try to live the happiest life possible. But I would like to respond to Baron de Holbach, because I just find that his arguments about the fact that there is no God to be simply absurd. I believe that if God did not exist, it would be necessary to invent him, because all nature cries aloud that he does exist. And the Baron always likes to invoke nature and saying that like there's only nature, there's no spirituality or God. But I believe that there's a supreme intelligence, an immense power, an admirable order, and everything teaches us our own dependence on it. So how can the Baron just say that every single thing that we see, or every process, or even a snail's organ has come to be without the presence of God? I simply think that we are intelligent beings, and intelligent beings cannot have been formed by a crude, blind, insensible being, because someone's intelligence, such as Mr. Newton, who, by the way, I have many disagreements with, but I recognize his intelligence must have come from another intelligence. And for me, I believe that must be God.
Mr. Diderot?
I just have to say that I agree with Baron de Holbach for saying that for people to, well, especially since most of us have been saying that everyone has the natural liberty to do what they want, and everyone is equal in the way that they can pursue their own wants. One of my quotes, I guess, I'm just going to read out loud. Men will never be free until the last king is strangled with the entrails of the last priest. And what I'm basically trying to say is that since we're on the topic of religion, in order for men to have this natural liberty that most of us is agreeing that men do have, we won't be able to achieve that natural liberty if we're chained down by the churches and the Christian beliefs, and also for those that don't think that, but for those that really believe in God, if you want me to believe in God, you must make me touch him. And this is what I think of the Christian dogma. I will only say one word on its morality. It is that a Catholic, who is a father of a family, convinced that the maxims of the Gospels must be practiced under penalty of what is called hell, and given the extreme difficulty in reaching this degree of perfection, which human weakness prevents, I see nothing else to be done than for him to take his child by the foot and smash him against the ground, or suffocate it at its birth. By this act, he saves it from the peril of damnation and assures him eternal happiness. Basically, if we want to be free and pursue happiness, or have the liberty to pursue anything, we have to be free from being chained down by religion. And
Mr. Newton?
To me, there's been never a higher source of earthly honor or distinction than that connected with the advances in sciences. And I feel that science and also religion are two things that make people really happy. I want to thank Voltaire for acknowledging my intellect. Especially in religion, God has created everything by number, weight, and measure, and God made and governs the world invisibly, and has commanded us to love and worship him and no other God, to honor our parents and masters, and love our neighbors as ourselves, and to be temperate, just, and peaceful, and to be merciful even to the brute beasts. So I feel that because thanks to God and religion, our world has become the way it is, where everyone's happy, everyone's loving each other. And regarding atheism and why we shouldn't have God, well, I feel that atheism is so senseless and odious to mankind that it's never made professors. It's obvious that God is really important towards pursuing happiness.
And as we are now moving towards the subject of religion, I want to rephrase our question again into what is the purpose of religion, and does it do more good or bad, and what gives religion its power?
Mr. Franklin?
Just a quick point. I think, as I mentioned before, I'm a deeply religious person. I think the religion is one of the most benevolent forces and benefits community a great deal. And in my perspective, anything that benefits for the betterment of the society, benefit of the community, is a good thing. And I willingly contributed to probably every denomination in Philadelphia. Every church, synagogues, every type of religion. So it's a beneficent force, yes.
I believe that God is important because not only did He create the world, but He created the perfect world for all of us. And because God has foreseen everything, He has provided a remedy for everything beforehand. So which means that even like some people may tell me saying that, oh, this world sucks because they are all suffering and they're feeling so much pain and sadness. But I would like to say that evil and suffering are a necessary precondition for happiness because it motivates the human will to go forward, and ultimately reach the end goal of happiness. So, as I like to say, it is not the journey that counts, but the destination. Excuse me, and I also like to point out, I think that Newton's understanding of God is flawed because he thinks that, because he has this really twisted theory about gravitation, and I think he's just using God to justify his weird theory, because I think when God works miracles, He does not do it in order to supply the wants of nature, but those of grace. Whoever thinks otherwise must needs have a very mean notion of the wisdom and power of God. So, the Newtonian theory of gravitation is thus unworthy of God.
Wow.
Newton?
All my discoveries have made in answer to prayer, and that's because of God. I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people. I really don't.
Good comeback.
Frederick?
See, on the topic of religion, I believe that religion is the idol of the mob. It adores everything it does not understand. I think it better to keep a profound silence with regard to the Christian fables, which are canonized by the antiquity and the credulity of absurd and insipid people. After all, religion is an odd metaphysical fiction often used to control people, which is why in my kingdom there's a tolerance of religion, which allows people to worship any person they wish to. However, it should not be followed so strictly.
Voltaire?
So a while before I had I discussed my belief in deism. Now I would like to make my position on Christianity clear. I believe that Christianity is the most ridiculous, the most absurd and bloody religion that has ever infected the world. And I have never made but one prayer to God, a very short one, which is, "Oh Lord, make my enemies ridiculous." And God granted it. So I believe that God is a comedian playing to an audience that is too afraid to laugh, because the Bible is it was written by fools, but children are made to learn it by heart in some certain compulsory elementary schools, So I believe that Christianity should not be spread, and even though I believe in God, I still believe that Christianity has been negatively impacting our world, and it has caused a lot of unnecessary division. Whereas with my belief in deism, I think that the heavenly being that I worship in deism can coexist with just reason and without any organized religion.
Diderot?
Even though I'm an atheist, however, I do agree with what Voltaire is saying about how Christianity is really, violent and really violent. For those that are extremely religious, they're basically the most dangerous madmen, and they're created by this religion. They aim to disrupt society trying to make good use of them, trying to basically change others to think the same way. And we swallow greedily any lie that flatters us, and we sip only little by little at the truth we find bitter. So like, for those that basically they just they learn about, or they follow whatever their parents believe, and they go into church and they just like they go to church not really understanding what they're learning, and they're just taking in these small lies slowly and slowly turning in slowly getting they're unable to think for themselves because of the religion, and so because of this, society is being disturbed, and it should be more fearful of those that are stirring up the trouble and trying to use religion to as an excuse for their actions.
Newton?
I don't know why everyone's really against God. If y'all think you're really smart, you probably would believe in God. He who thinks half-heartedly will not believe in God, but he who really thinks has to believe in God. Because if you guys don't believe in a Christian God, I don't know what you guys are thinking.
Joseph II?
Let me put my spin on religion. Though I'm a Habsburg, though I am a Catholic, when it comes to theology, there's never much light. There's so many conflicts, so many problems caused by religions, so many religious words. Gets on my nerves all the time. But I don't think religion is all bad, as many of you atheists claim. I think that religion is a sense of community. It promotes goodwill among people, and we as a country should use religion to do good for the people, which is centralized religion. You know how Austria is multi-ethnic, so we have so many different religions, so many different people, and I just think that making religion more free, such as patent toleration, which I help reform many Catholic denominations, such as the Orthodox, Calvinists, or Lutherans. I reformed the Catholic traditions and made ceremonies less ornate. I also did the Edict of Toleration, which helped free Jewish people, let them worship privately. So I think that by making religion more accessible to people, having more people associate with each other, and permit a sense of community and trust among people.
Rousseau?
I am beside myself. I am beside myself in the fact that I find myself agreeing with the two monarchs here. Both Frederick the Great and Joseph II have expressed ultimately what I feel is the enlightened, if you will, attitude toward the divine, which is that of indifference. Where it can be a force for good, compassion, benevolence, brotherhood, I support it very much so. On the other hand, when it can be a force for oppression and for keeping the common man in the dark and for solidifying the social class structure, then I see it as an evil. So ultimately, religion with a conscience, I believe, is the only way it can benefit society and therefore men.
Jefferson?
You make a good point, Joe, about how religion fosters community and hope and love and relationships, and I totally wholeheartedly agree with that. But the question here...
It's a beautiful sentiment. I could not agree with you more.
Yes, I agree with that sentiment. However, the question that was proposed was not about religion and religious sects. It was about God and the presence of God and whether that presence is benevolent or whether that presence is good or bad. And I used to think that Voltaire's saying of this is the best of all possible worlds was optimistic in saying that, or not Voltaire, but the best of all possible worlds was saying that it was a positive view. But I've come to realize over time that that's actually a pessimistic view, not an optimistic view. If this is the best of all possible worlds that we are given, there is so much negativity and so much hatred in this world. If this is the best that your God could come up with, is your God really that benevolent?
Why so angry?
Just posing a question, not saying I believe in it. I'm just.
We ran out of wine 5 minutes ago. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
On that note, we should take another 5-minute break.
Where's the alcohol?
Where's the alcohol? All right.
Okay.
Let's get started. Mr. Leibniz, I believe you have something to say.
Okay, people. So
I just want to respond to TJ's little accusation here saying that, oh, this world, like, how can this world have so much evil inside if it's not the best world? Well, let me try to use some deductive reasoning here. So, we can all agree that God has the idea of infinitely many universes, saying there are so many different universes to choose from, and only one of these universes can exist at any given time. Okay? And we also know that God is good and he is very reasonable. So it only makes sense for God to choose the best world out of all these possible worlds. So if it's not the perfect world, then you can't really blame him, right? So I will still like to reiterate my firm belief that this world that we live in is the best possible world. Thank you.
Paula? Right now, much of our discussion is based on the foundation that religion exists and that God exists. And I'd first like to disagree with that, and I'd like to pose a question to us all. Why would God give the beings he created the power to destroy them? If you use common sense and rational thinking, there's no logical conclusion to that answer. And so if we are trying to assess the purpose of religion and whether or not it does more good or bad, it does more bad as people have suffered and become insane for centuries by the thought of eternal punishment after death. Wouldn't it be better to depend on blind matter than by a God who puts out traps for people, invites them to sin, and allows them to sin and commit crimes he could prevent, only to get the barbarian pleasure to punish them in an excessive way, of no use for himself, without them changing their ways and without their example preventing others from committing crimes? So, majority of the reason why people look up to gods in the first place is because of their general want to pursue knowledge and to pursue a greater purpose in life. And if they offer up their heaven vows, sacrifices, and presents, and only to obtain sufferings, then this is really ignorance from people ourselves. So that is why religion does do more harm than good.
And Ms. Olympico.
So as an atheist, I distaste religion, particularly Catholicism, since it oppresses women. I believe that religion should not prohibit one from listening to reason or encourage one to be deaf to nature.
And Ms. Catherine the Great.
So I agree with Joseph II in that religion unites the people. The purpose of religion is to maintain order in society. I myself have converted to Russian Orthodoxy, which is the religion of my people. This is an act Mr. Machiavelli, who is not present, would totally agree with. I would like to say that Russian Orthodoxy is the best religion. Anyways, okay. Without the doctrine that the right to rule derives directly from God, my beloved nation and many more in Europe may currently be in chaos at the moment without a firm leader to guide their people. So obviously, religion maintains order in society as a whole, so it benefits society.
Mr. Kant.
Two things fill the mind with my mind with admiration and awe constant: the starry heavens above me and the moral law within it. Without God, there will be no morals in this world. Therefore, religion, God must exist in order for like morals and ethics to exist in this world. The main purpose of religion is to promote moral and ethical judgment. And according to my categorical imperative theory, there is a universal law in every aspect of the world. Therefore, for us to be moral, there must be a universal law that we follow. And without a higher being, everyone's perspectives would be subjective. And so this higher order of nature would be a guide to our actions.
Sir Isaac.
I don't know why a lot of you are bashing religion. It might be because you guys don't even understand it. The word God usually signifies Lord, but not every Lord is a God. The more time and devotion one spends in the worship of false gods, the less he is able to spend that of the true one. So whatever religion you guys are with, you guys should stop spending time with the fake gods, and you guys should be more understanding about the true Christian God. A man may imagine things that are false, but he can only understand things that are true. For if the things are false, the apprehension of them is not understanding, and therefore, and it's quite obvious that you guys aren't understanding of like the true God, as you guys are spending too much time with all the fake ones.
Voltaire. First of all, I'd like to reiterate that one should always be wary of people who talk in absolutes, because if they claim to know everything about a certain topic, then like I like to say, perfection is the enemy of the good. So what we see in Sir Newton, what we see in Sir Newton is clearly an example of fanaticism, and I believe that fanaticism is a monster that pretends to be the child of religion. See, Sir Newton, who, by the way, has also dissed my lover, he also is stating that he states that like all the other gods are fake gods, which shows that he doesn't have any religious tolerance himself. So this is clearly unenlightened, and I believe that we shouldn't follow his example. Now, continuing on. I would want to ask the atheists in this room, including Baron de Holbach, how they would reply to the policies of people such as my friend Immanuel Kant, because just like Mr. Kant, I believe that the institution of religion exists only to keep mankind in order and to make men merit the goodness of God by their virtue. So I would want, and this is a thought that's also echoed by Catherine the Great. So I would question like the atheists in this room whether they think that religion is helpful towards like keeping like good government of like the people. Yeah, because personally I believe that that is the case.
In response to Voltaire, the question is posed about whether or not, as religion serves to govern people and maintain order, I'd like to argue that in the system of nature, that there's no free will in our society, and because of that, then people are able to be controlled in this in life, and therefore religion has no place in our society.
Franklin?
But Darren, how can you say that? But God has given every human being free will to make decisions. Would you agree with that?
I would like to say that in this room of learned people, it's amazing that so many people would like to accept something as gospel, if you will, that has no empirical evidence. Here we are living in an era of empirical evidence in the birth of the scientific method, and yet many people from Franklin to Kant to Voltaire, some of the most respected minds in history, are all still claiming an existence of something for which there is no empirical evidence, nor do I believe there will be empirical evidence for it in the next 300 years. Why is that?
Newton?
As a really good scientist, and even the president of the Royal Society of London, I believe that religion is indeed true. We account the scriptures of God to be the most sublime philosophy. I find more sure marks of authenticity in the Bible than in any profound history whatever.
Can Monsieur Newton show any empirical evidence to support his belief? One of the most wonderful things about Monsieur Newton is that he found empirical evidence to support his beliefs on gravity. It appears that in this case, what Monsieur Newton wishes to be true is clearly not supported by any empirical evidence.
As I've already said, all my discoveries are made in answer to prayers. Therefore, God is there and able to help me with my scientific discovery.
Well played.
On scientific discoveries, I would like to direct everyone's attention to arts and science, and what is the role of science in art and society, and what is their purpose as well? Montesquieu?
Well, I myself have studied biology, geology, and physics, Science is extremely important to the development of nations. I would like to emphasize on that its political implications. Political immaturity is a result of not studying the arts and sciences, and it is what keeps people in a savage, barbaric state.
Wollstonecraft? I think the role of science in society is important, but can only be progressed by women. Science will truly not improve unless women get involved. Women were for the longest time taught from their infancy that beauty is a woman's scepter, and that mind shapes itself to the body, and roaming around its gilt cage only seeks to adorn its prison. And what this means is that I am sick and tired of the distinction between a masculine focus on intelligence and a feminine focus on appearances. It's only science and art will only improve and progress if women contribute their ideas as well.
Joseph II?
I think that the arts and science is integral to improving society, and I believe that throughout history, all great nations, they have great scientific advancements as well as known for their art. And for me, just as an example, my favorite musician is Mozart. He's one of my court players. I've listened to him all the time. You definitely gotta check him out.
Frederick? I find myself in agreement to Joe over here. I think he brings up very reasonable points regarding science and a nation. I think that it is very much true that the greatest nations often have the best advancements in science, which is why I surround myself with the courtiers who talk about calculus and geometry. Although I may not always understand it, I understand that there's a synthesis and a probable truth to it as well. I believe that books make up no small part of human happiness, which is why the sciences should be well read to every single person.
Leibniz?
Oh, okay, so I think I might have mentioned this before, but the ultimate purpose of science is to advance human happiness. Like, would you guys be doing science if you hated it? The answer is no. Okay, so, and another reason is I think that we must seek the principle of all existences and the laws of nature, because God always intends the best and the most perfect. So I feel like by studying science, you can learn more about why God is the way it is. I feel like that is a true divine way to live your life.
Devolva?
Instead of learning about reasons why God is good, it is more about science enabling us to realize why God doesn't exist. So through our advancements and our studies, we will only learn more about the unvarying laws of nature and how there is no room for spirituality and existence of a higher being. And through science, we will be able to achieve greater happiness, and it will purify us from all the miracles and all the other aspects that spirituality forces us, and which leads us to greater ignorance.
Frederick?
I find myself in agreement to the Holbach for one of the first times. While I believe that science has many uses, one of the greatest and noblest pleasure which men can have in this world is to discover new truths, and the next is to shake off old prejudices. While this does not necessarily mean that God does not exist, I believe that if we're to discover new truths, then that should be the path that man should take.
Montesquieu?
I wonder why we have to talk about how arts and science relate to God or religion. I believe that the acquisition of knowledge itself yields an inner satisfaction. We become happier just by knowing more. It's a personal relationship between people who practice art and science and happiness.
Catherine?
So I believe that science plays a role in the well-being of society. For example, it contributes to childcare, medicine, and inoculation. The inoculation of the widespread smallpox an uninvited stranger that has appeared on the doorsteps of my people, has allowed me to establish inoculation stations in every province and thus benefit the lives of approximately 2 million people in my beloved land. And it is important to note that the establishment of such inoculation stations could only be done so by a monarch. So I would say that science, spread by the power of the monarch, plays an important role in the well-being of society.
I really like how everyone's supporting science. I feel the best way of understanding is to give a few good examples. And by that, I mean, we could discover a lot of things. By that, we can actually see the forces of nature, science being put into play. And by that, we're able to understand more and like become a more progressive society. I mean, isn't that why we have, what the point of the Enlightenment is, to like improve ourselves and expand our knowledge?
I think the woman attending this salon and Montesquieu will want to talk about marriage. And will Miss Wollstonecraft?
I would like to first define marriage. So marriage is legalized prostitution. Women are being subject to sexual exploitation by their husbands, and society justifies this through a contract. Women are often treated as nothing but empty-headed playthings, and such beings could never make beautiful mothers, as they took the horizon to be the eyes that the men they flirted with. And so I have a few proposals to change this. I propose that women should be taught skills as to be able to support themselves and their children in their widowhood, and never have to marry or remarry out of financial necessity. I support that women should also marry out of love for a man's mind and not his appearance. Otherwise, these women might doom themselves to bitterness and resentment once their husband grows old, and as they are young, they might also be subjected to sexual exploitation. And lastly, I think marriages ought to have friendship rather than physical attraction, so that women are less susceptible to sexual exploitation and being taken advantage of. So marriage at this point, men often have the upper hand, but I think it's very important that we make this more of a justified concept.
Well, since this is turning into a book reading seminar here, I would like to quote myself then as well. With this grandstanding, I may as well take part. In the union of the sexes, each alike contributes to the common end, but not in the same way. What? From this diversity springs the first difference which I have observed, and that is the moral relations between the one and the other. The one should be active and strong, the other passive and weak. No! It is necessary that the one have the power and the will. It is enough that the other should offer little resistance. Miss Wollstonecraft, specifically for you, I would like to quote myself once again, that a woman is specially made to please the man.
With every barbarous people, force is law. The stronger sex imposes on the weaker. It is civilization alone which replaces women in the enjoyment of their natural equality. That first teaches us to subdue the selfish passions, as Rousseau speaks of, and to respect those rights in others which we value in ourselves.
I would like to respond to Rousseau with my own quote as well. This was Rousseau's opinions respecting men. It's very clear that Rousseau here respects men a lot, but I extend it to women and confidently assert that they have been drawn out of their sphere by false refinement and not by an endeavor to acquire masculine qualities.
Catherine? To Ms. Wollstonecraft, I would like to say, are you saying that marriage is women giving up their dignity in exchange for money? But I take myself for example. I was married, yet I did not give up my dignity, nor have I lost power. In fact, I've only gained power. But unless you are saying that Peter was the prostitute who paid to be my prostitute. And to Rousseau, I would say that Russia was struggling under my stupid husband, and his actions only made situations worse. And the people hated him, both the people and his subjects. And he did not have the rationality to act in the best interest of his state. However, under my rule, I've expanded the territories of my empire, I've bettered the lives of the people, and I would say I am the greatest monarch of Russia of all time.
And I'm sure you would agree with yourself.
Since we are all talking about things that we have written ourselves, I would like to offer a fresh perspective about marriage and also polygamy, a very interesting topic. I like to bring up my essays regarding the influence of climate on the nature of people. Depending on the climate of the region, the extent of gender inequality will naturally vary. In warm southern climates, girls are ripe for marriage at a young age, 8 or 9 years old. By the time they're able to use their intellectual reasoning after they are older, they would be considered by their husbands to be old and ugly. It is therefore justified for men to take on several wives. In temperate climates, the beauty of women tends to be preserved, and men and women marry with a smaller age gap when women have become more intellectually mature. Women's increased usefulness at the time of marriage is an indication for men to only take one wife. And in cold climates, women are actually more reasonable than men. Men in these regions tend to drink strong liquors regularly, whereas women have a natural tendency to avoid these habits. Alcohol establishes intemperance among men. Women's resistance against such urges to drink establishes balance. And I would like to ask the women here, where are you guys from?
Just
Yeah. Are you from a cold climate or temperate or warm climate? And consider what this means for you. Okay. Well, I understand. You actually read my works.
Yes. Voltaire. What I believe that, although I agree with some of the Baron Montesquieu's points, but I think that he misunderstands that actually the relationship between a man and woman, or even like between just a couple, you know. See, I'm actually very tolerant. I see both sides. So I would like to point out that it doesn't have to be in marriage. I recognize the value of marriage because marriage makes men wiser and more virtuous because like there's a balance, just like the Baron said, and the more married men you have, the less crime there will be. But actually, if you can take my lover, for example, she's actually married, but she's also, you know, my lover as well. And I'm not married to her. And so she has the power, you know, to like have this relationship with me as well as being married to her husband, who willingly funds my lifestyle. So this is a great example of how women should have rights, because they should have like the power and dignity, as Catherine the Great stated. They should have the dignity to be able to make their own choices and regarding their love lives. And I believe that marriage isn't the only way for people to have relationships. And also on the note of age gap, I also have a relationship with my niece who's like 30 years younger. Or I will have, I think I can see the future. I will have a relationship with my niece. So it seems that like, you know, I might be living in a cold climate in the future.
Proud? This is my words exactly.
Oh wait, I'll be living in a warm climate.
You have already taken on so many lovers. That makes sense.
I agree with Voltaire, except for the fact that marriage makes men wise. No, I don't think so.
But incense certainly makes for stupidity.
I would like to address Catherine the Great's point about my point on marriage of depriving women of dignity. So I would like to clarify that I don't think that marriage deprives women of dignity, but rather I think that marriage at this current state deprives women of their basic rights. And I think that it's important that we restore these rights for women, and we make sure that women are taught skills to be able to thrive on their own.
So I'd like to start by saying that nowadays it seems to be a shame to marry a girl who is a mother, who has never been married. And I believe that this prejudice is misplaced, which is why I'm constantly confused by this talk of marriage and this union between a man and a woman. See, why does love have to be between a man and a woman? See, everyone's quoting their personal works. I like to quote my personal experience. I believe that through my personal experience, I've learned that love can come from a man to a man. So therefore, union could happen between a man and a man, or a man and a woman. It does not. It does not have to be perhaps the opposite gender.
Yeah, I could validate that.
On this extremely inclusive and positive note, I would like to end today's salon. Thank you all for attending, and I believe we've exchanged more than just our own quotes, musician suggestions, or even quite a few well-timed comebacks. We've all come here today representing our nations, our works, and most importantly, our discoveries and our ideas. It is the existence and prominence of people such as us that, like Kant had said in the beginning, our society is able to move forward on a path towards enlightenment.